Welcome to Nightlight. Step away from the mainstream and gather around as we enlighten the world and our realities and travel this cosmic journey we call life. Join us as we share with you and provide that beacon that can guide us all to a better way. Explore with us as we examine a metaphysical montage of spiritual insights, covering everything from the mundane to the magical, UFOs to unicorns, and everything in between. This is a time of awakening, of sharing and evolving, of spreading our wings and soaring on the cosmic breath of creation. Come and join with other light-minded spirits as we weave our lights together to seek understanding, enlightenment, and, with a little luck, some wisdom. This is Nightlight, a reminder that you are never alone.
You choose to be different, and you choose to be unique, and you have integrity. And sometimes that's what this spiritual field is. It is allowing yourself to be different, feeling comfortable that you are following your own inner truth, and then suddenly you turn around and you look, and there's a whole bunch of other people that have done the exact same thing, and you're not alone, even though you feel it from time to time. So, welcome back, everybody. This is our second run at this material, and I am very grateful that all of you showed up. And I think that I want to first go into the fact that we're looking at a spiritual development group. We're looking at the spirituality that we have inside, and how are we developing it. How are we getting in touch and in tune with that spirit that we carry within ourselves? And, you know, the main question has always been, okay, I know I carry a master teacher inside of me. I know that I have great wisdom inside of me. I know that my spirit has been through time, all of that crap. But how does that help to make this lifetime a better lifetime? And that's a good question. It makes it a better lifetime if you can touch into that energy, that level of consciousness that you've got. And that's what this class is actually all about. It's a class, this circle is all about. And I emphasize circle, not class, because I'm not here to teach. I'm here to share and to learn from you as much as, you know, I'm here for all of us to throw thoughts around and learn from one another. And so what is really important to know is that the purpose of all of this is to help all of us find a better, more intense, more secure link to that spirit that we carry within us, that can give us the infinite wisdom, the infinite insight, the infinite everything. And it's an important thing for us to do, those of us who are in the spiritual field, whether or not you're reading, whether or not you claim to be a psychic or a medium or an intuitive or a rebel rouser, whatever your claims are as to what label identifies you the best, the reality is we are all on a spiritual journey. We are all spiritual entities. We all carry a spirit within us that in many ways is just waiting for our consciousness to recognize it, claim it, and shove the ego aside for a while so that there can be communication, so that we can get a better understanding as to how to make this lifetime a richer, more abundant, more blissful, more joyful experience for the consciousness. The higher consciousness is always going to gather what it needs, no matter how much we want to struggle and go our other directions. We always will go with the flow. That aspect of our consciousness is needful of doing in order for it to gather the material it needs to have and the information it needs to have for this lifetime. we sometimes forget that we do carry that wisdom around inside with us, that we are not alone. And it's important for us to sort of get back into the place where we do have that connection with the Spirit, where we do listen to it when it talks to us, and it does talk to us in many different ways, in many different shapes and forms. It communicates with us through daydreams, through night dreams, through inner vision. It's that voice that talks to us that isn't telling us what to do, but giving us a better philosophical understanding of what's going on. And I really, my purpose here in creating this spiritual development circle is to sort of help to reattach everyone to that aspect that they carry within, and to help us to recognize and remember all of the things that we have learned through time. And it's a tough journey. The easiest way for me to do this is to sort of go back to the very foundations. And we talked about spirituality last week, and this week we're going to be talking about balance and harmony. The give and the take that takes place within the universe, and the universe is an amazing. It's an amazing work of art. It is perfectly balanced. There is equal exchange. For every action there is a reaction. For every cause there is an effect. And it's important for us to understand that philosophy. Now, I know you all understand the philosophical part of it. The reality is that the universe is the macrocosm, and we are the microcosm. And that old saying of as above, so below is very, very appropriate. The universe is perfectly balanced. There is no chaos out there. There's stuff that looks messy, but there is balance within that messy stuff. And so too should we be. There are, depending on what book you read, 7, 12, 20, 24, universal laws. And they apply to the universe, and they apply to every segment and individual and aspect of our reality. And if we live in accordance with those universal laws, our lifetimes will be rich and abundant and blissful and prosperous and joyful and all of the wonderful stuff that we want. And the only thing that's actually standing in the way of that is us. Because often our consciousnesses think they know it all, and they try to control our reality. But the truth is, if we live in accordance with those laws that are out there, our life can't help but be absolutely blissful. And somebody once said, "Oh, we're not in this is not heaven." And I would beg to differ. I truly think this is heaven. And I think we just haven't realized it yet. It's not the end game by any means, but it's supposed to be a place of abundance and love and all sorts of wonderful stuff. And it's our perception, it's our choice as to how we perceive it, as to how we function with it. And my goal here in the next couple of weeks, we're going to be going over all of these universal laws that apply to us, and they all are they're absolutes. For every action, there's a reaction. For every cause, there's an effect. And it's, I know we all know them. You're probably going to recognize a lot of them when I send the material out next week. We all know them. We understand the philosophy. But are we actually living those concepts? Are we actually living in accordance with those laws? Are we actually living examples of what happens when we do live according to those laws? And one of the most basic principles that are out there is, and the simplest one to pull out and start with first, is the Golden Rule. And that's at the core of every major religion out there, every major religious or spiritual organization out there. And it applies to to everyone and everything. It transcends culture, religion, ethnicity, race, and sexuality. It applies to everybody. And it's called, one of the major principles of spirituality. So it means that basically, you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I found, with the help of Deb, I don't know how many there are. There are almost a couple of dozen of different philosophies here in which the Golden Rule is really the fundamental basis of them. And I printed them all out for you so you could really see that this is not a Christian thought. This is not something that is just to Christianity. It transcends that. It goes beyond that totally. It goes back 3,500, 5,000 years, and even longer. But I couldn't find anything that actually said it. I mean, it goes back longer, but I didn't have any documentation that I could write out here for you, so I didn't add that. But it's been around since the beginning of time, and it is, in many cases, in many circles, it's been called the foundation for divine law. And it's not a religious concept; it's a spiritual one, and it's a journey of understanding, how we begin to manifest our spiritual understanding into our reality. And it's sort of like what goes around comes around. You don't do anything to another that you wouldn't want done to yourself. Now, that's the simplicity part of it. That's the part that gets, thrown around at playgrounds, and that's the part that children, yell at each other and stuff like that. But it's not just the words. And it's not just the thought. It is the emotion that goes with it, and it is the spiritual understanding that goes with it. It doesn't mean just words and actions. It means thoughts. It means emotion. It means, how does this affect me personally? And what is really important for us to understand as we go into all of these laws and all of these focuses, every single one of us has, none of us are babies. Every single one of us has experiences where we can show how this is, taken effect in our lives or around us, or how we have given advice to others, whether it's just advice in a consolatory nature or if it's a reading, and told them how they could change their life and told them how they could, move into a more beneficial area within their life. And we know the philosophy and we know the words, but the reality here is that's not what this circle is about. I know you all know the words. I know you all have the philosophy, but the reality is here, and what we want to focus on here is how are you as an individual utilizing it within your own personal life. We all give advice all the time. And people do come to us for advice, and we give it. But it's important that we realize unless we are living those concepts ourselves, our words are empty and they don't mean anything. So that we have to, really question ourselves in all of these different aspects. Am I doing this? Am I living this? Am I an example of this is what you do? Is my life in a mess, and am I struggling horribly, and then I'm trying to tell someone else how to make their life better? And it doesn't equate. We have to be able to be a living example of our words, and that's part of the spiritual journey. That's part of the spiritual aspect of life. The law of cause and effect, flows very naturally from the balance and harmony and the golden rule, and it has more to do with actions. For every action you take, there is a reaction, and sometimes we don't really pay attention to that ourselves. We preach it, but we don't often realize it within our own realities. And this is a time and a place, and I'm not putting everybody through, analysis here in any way, shape, or form, but I am sending you back into yourself and having you ask yourself, is this something that I do? Is this something that I am an example of? And if you are in a place in your life where you are stuck, Do you go and take those extra steps to be creative, to open the channels, to shift your perspective, to move into new venues? Or are you telling people what to do, and it's kind of like, don't do as I do, do as I say, and that's empty. It doesn't work. It doesn't help you evolve or develop, and it doesn't help the other person either, because they can absolutely turn and look at you and say, all right, are you doing that? Is this working for you? Is this an example of what you have experienced and are experiencing at this moment in time? And there are times when all of us should really sit back and kind of take stock and sort of withdraw from the mainstream and check ourselves out. We take our cars in, hopefully on occasion, for yearly checkups, but are we doing it with ourselves? And it's something that to tell you the truth, I don't do as often as I should, and yet every now and then it just smacks me in the face. And last night, as we were discussing a lot of this material, I heard readers talking about the advice that they had given others, and I got sucked into it too. It's hard to not get sucked into good discussions. But the point and the purpose of all the material we're going through and all of the things that we're reading into is to help us become better people and walk a more spiritual life. If you're walking a more spiritual life and pathway and journey, then absolutely anything you say or give to another person has great validity and will be accepted with respect and gratitude. What happens is sometimes we give those empty words over and over and over to the same people, and they keep coming back because our words have not rung true enough within them, because we aren't living it as honorably or as fully as we should be, and therefore it's not working for them because it doesn't work for us because we're not using it. So as we go through all of these universal laws, and next week's packet of material is going to be, I think, pretty thick, but don't panic, because I think it's at least 2, if not 3 weeks worth. Because there are a lot of these laws, and the more we understand them, the more we actually address ourselves, the more we look in the mirror and say, okay, are you doing this? I mean, sometimes after a radio show, I will really look in the mirror and say, okay, I told this person to do this. Am I doing this same thing? Am I just telling her or him the best way to handle it and ignoring my own advice? And sometimes I have to go, oh, crap. I really have to step back a second and address some issues that I have going on here, because I'm not really the living example. And let's face it, if we were all living all of these laws totally and absolutely, frankly, we'd be perfect and we wouldn't be here. So that it's a matter of taking a look at our lives and reattaching ourselves with those parts of us that we sort of let drift. And we all let stuff drift. That's human. But when we are really focusing on bringing the spirituality into our lives and living it more fully and more richly, and then sharing it with other people, then by for goodness sake, listen to what you're saying and check it out. Do a reality check. Make sure that the advice that you are giving is advice that you are living. And if it's not, then there's an issue, and then there's a problem, and then there's something that we have to really address and reconnect with. It's not the end of the world. It's just a matter of, I need to back up and take another look at how I'm addressing the work situation, the relationship situation, whatever the situation is, and understand that these laws, if you follow them, if you flow with them, if you apply them to your life, bring such richness and bliss and abundance into your life that it is just amazing. It's worth every minute. It's worth every nanosecond that you apply yourself to. But if you, for instance, are working a job you don't like, and if you work really, really hard and you put all your effort into it and you exhaust yourself and you hate the job, but you do it as well as you can, and still nothing happens right, then you have to look at, all right, if you don't like the job, then you're not addressing it. You're not putting yourself, body and soul, into it. You're putting body for sure, but not soul. And if you're not doing that, then your return is not your return is not in direct proportion to the work you've put in, because your intent and your perception haven't been there. So that in many cases it's very appropriate to be pursuing your passions, because that's where you really put everything into it. Sometimes you can't do that, though. Sometimes your passions are just so unique and eclectic that they don't address themselves to a full-time job. And if that's the case, then whatever your full-time job is, you have to be able to put yourself into it with purpose, with direction, with intent, to make sure that you do the best you can for the best of all, for the good of all. And you really have that spiritual aspect pouring out as well. You will know how well you're doing this by the kind of results you get back, and it's an amazing thing. I have to tell you that the universe does take care of each and every one of us, and when you're flowing in the right direction and in the right way, everything falls into place unbelievably. And when you're not, even though you think you are, hear the think, and things don't work, you have to sort of readdress and relook at everything. But I think the other thing that's really important for us to understand is that sometimes we have had such a great period of time where there has been negative thought and negative energies put out in our life, possibly before we got the spiritual calling or whatever, but that sometimes, no matter how hard we work, things don't come to us the way we would hope that they would. And if you really are genuinely doing the best you can, and if there is a genuine spiritual nature to it, you just keep it up, because the universal balance doesn't have anything to do with just this moment in time. It has to do with the entire lifetime, and sometimes past lifetimes. And so sometimes it takes us longer to get that flow going, because we are sort of balancing up what negative influences were in our life in the last 10 years or 5 years or whatever it is. But eventually that balance does come, and eventually there is that wonderful flow of spiritual energy that is just unbelievable. And it is true. What you put out, you do get back. And sometimes that return is not as fast as we would like it to be, but I guarantee you it is always, always there. If you want to be very successful, you just try to cause positive effects that many people will benefit from, and the more people you can benefit from what you create, the more successful you become. It's really it's an absolute. It's one of those universal laws, and it does absolutely work. But we have to pay attention to what we're putting out there, to what our actions are. The Indians have an amazing philosophy that it's the 7-generation law, and I think Deb knew what tribe it was, but I'm not sure. I'll have to check. I got it from Patrick, and I know that he read it someplace, but he had a photographic memory, so it could be anywhere. But basically, it's the 7-generation law, and if you can prove that your actions will not hurt anyone or anything for 7 generations to come, then it's an action that is appropriate. But if you can't prove that, then you have to step back and say, okay, maybe I have to adjust this. Maybe I have to move in a different way or form or shape or whatever. And it's just amazing how that changes everything that goes on in your life. The law of cause and effect can change your life dramatically, but you have to understand the effects that your actions are going to bring. It isn't enough to take action. It's it's much more than that. You have to pay attention to what is your intent, and what is this action going to cause, and what it causes will cause another action, and then another cause, and it is a never-ending spiral that does take us down an amazing pathway. But you have to understand that it's you as a person that are an example of what you want to bring into your life. You have to become what you want to draw into your life. And it isn't overnight. It isn't, I'll work on it this weekend and then everything will be perfect. Not necessarily. Maybe if you have very little to do, it will be, but not necessarily, really. What is it? Ralph Waldo Emerson called this law the law of laws. It is powerful. You get back what you put out. It's like a boomerang. You throw it out and it comes right back at you and hits you between the eyes. And that is true. That is absolutely true. And it's something that I don't think we pay close enough attention to, especially when we're dealing with other people in our lives. Sometimes we're very short with people. Sometimes we don't. We give people what we think they want to hear. Sometimes we just ignore people. Sometimes, but you have to understand this law applies to every second within your day and night. It isn't just well, all right, I'm going to donate this to somebody and then I'll get something good back. It's your entire day. It's that whole 24-hour time frame. And if you're not living it that entire time frame, you're probably doing something else someplace else that's negating the good. So you have to pay close attention to your actions and your intent as to what your actions are. Sometimes we take action hoping for a result, and that means that the action wasn't made unconditionally, and unless it's unconditional, it doesn't count. It's sort of like, what's the best way? I understand that. I have always understood that in order to have spiritual energy flow through my life and manifest within my life, I have to be creative. I've always known that. When I taught school, I always did arts and crafts with the kids. So I thought I was really covered as far as crafts went. But the reality is I was paid for everything I did with the children that I worked with. And you don't get to double dip. If you get a paycheck for something, it doesn't count as a selfless, joyful, creative process. So I had to, when I figured that out, I had to find other ways to be creative in my life in order to open those channels up so that the spiritual energy could flow and manifest and talk to me. And it was amazing, the difference it makes. Oftentimes we come to log jams in our life where nothing moves, nothing works. And we have to really open those creative channels again. And I often say to people, you don't have to paint the Sistine Chapel, and you don't have to carve David, and you don't have to, paint the Mona Lisa. Creativity is so many different things to so many different people. It's just unbelievable. The more creative you are, the more you open those channels, the more you touch into that infinite spark within you, and you have a direct correspondent, a direct connection to creation. It's that simple. It can be coloring, it can be gardening, it can be taking motors apart and putting them back together. It can be any number of things. But being creative within your life is what opens those channels and allows the energy to flow. And once the energy is flowing, then there is forward motion. Then there is activity within your life. But it's up to you. You create it, or you choose not to. So it's sort of totally up to you as to how you progress along this pathway, how you touch into that spirit that's within you. And it's fascinating how lots of people have that philosophy and know exactly how to do it and choose not to, and then complain about their lives. you have to understand that in order for you to flow, to be on a spiritual pathway, to enjoy the magic that goes along with being on a spiritual pathway, and to find that wonderful synchronistic connection to the spirit that dwells inside of you, you're required to make choices and decisions. You're required to commit yourself to things. You're required to become a living example of what it is that you're seeking. You can't just read books, do vision boards, meditate, do mantras, light candles, shake, rattles, and drum. That is not going to do it. It's how you live your life. It's how you treat humanity. It's how you touch your environment. That's what determines whether or not you're on a spiritual pathway or not. And that's what qualifies you to say that you are a spiritual entity. One of the other major laws that I wanted to touch on is the law of attraction. And, we've all seen the videos. We've all read the books. We've all listened to the philosophy and been overwhelmed by how everybody became rich and famous because of putting out material that was older than time itself. And, to defend it, they did turn focus onto some of the more spiritual sides of life, and they started people thinking. What is to the negative is that they watered down the power and the application down to the point they trivialized the law and made it a bit of a joke. Wishing isn't going to make it so. Visualizing and acting as though something has happened isn't going to make it so. But working towards it, it's great to have a focus. I'm not saying that's not bad, but I am saying that unless you're willing to work for it, unless you're willing to put the energy out there unless you're willing to create the flow of spiritual energy in your life so that the universe can help you make things happen, unless you're going to change your life in order to accept those changes, it's not going to happen. So we have to remember, again, we're spirits on a human journey, and we have lots of situations we're supposed to experience, evolve over and through and around. But it's up to us to make the choices, and it's up to us to change and shift our lives. And nobody's life is perfect. Mine isn't perfect, for sure. And it's just reminding yourself constantly about the spiritual journey, the spiritual purpose, and how can I make this better? How can I be a better person? How can I reach more people and share whatever it is I have to share? And if you are in a house and you're doing housework and you're doing laundry and feeding children and taking care of a family, you can still find ways to do that. It's not and I have to add and. It doesn't have to cost you any money. It's how much you're going to invest yourself in. Has nothing to do with your pocketbook. Edgar Cayce called the law of attraction, I'm going to quote this, the more and more each is impelled by that which is intuitive or relying upon the soul force within, the greater and further, the deeper and the broader, the more constructive may be the result. And that's true. The law of attraction is just amazing. And it deals a great deal with your intuition. It deals a great deal with beginning to touch into that part of ourselves that is the higher consciousness. And I don't care what you call it, imagination, intuition, insight, whatever you call it, doesn't matter. It happens to be that master, guide, teacher, spirit that is within you. That's what you're tapping into when you're paying attention to your intuition. That's what is absolutely advising you when you get feelings, when you get inspiration. It comes from that level of consciousness. It comes from that master spirit that rests within you. And so often we don't pay attention to those aspects of ourselves. So often we think our way through things without allowing that other level of insight, inspiration, and wisdom to be involved in the process. And when we do that, we cut ourselves off from that higher spirit, and we cut ourselves off from the spirit within, and we cut ourselves off from the spiritual journey. if your focus is on money, if your focus is on toys, if your focus is on, relationships and all of that stuff, and not in how can I become a better person, how can I help people, how can I address my reality and help people and be kind, good, and giving. And I'm not saying you become a wishy-washy person at all, but I am saying that unless that aspect of your unless that aspect of your spirit is involved in your life, you're not on a spiritual journey. You're on a physical journey for sure. Now, lots of us wrestle with lots of different aspects of life that are difficult, and come on, it's common. We all wrestle for sure. And what happens is that we lose sight of the fact that we have this wealth of information, this wealth of knowledge, this wealth of wisdom that is sitting there just waiting to help us understand, waiting to help us incorporate other aspects into our life that will loosen the tightness, the grasp that the physical difficulties cause. I mean, I can certainly talk to what it feels like to be, not even down to your last penny, but be down to your mother's last penny. I know what it feels like to be hard up for money and things like that, but I also know that when at those times you stand back and you take a look at things and you just say, okay, how can I make this better? How can I make this better for everybody? How can I treat this situation with dignity and integrity, and how can I solve this problem? Once you touch into connecting to the higher consciousness and allowing it to take part within your life, that you've got that connection. You've got it made. And so long as you don't lose that connection, so long as you don't forget that connection is there and go back to the ego-centered self, you're fine. But there are so many different aspects to a spiritual journey and the laws that go along with it. It's so important that we keep that connection and that we get that connection. All of us, every single one of us has a master teacher inside of us. All of us, every single one of us, hear that intuition speaking to us from time to time. Most of us, say that's really cool, or I knew that was going to happen, or yada, 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 or to coin a phrase of Chris's, blah, blah, blah. And yet we don't validate it, and we don't kind of flow with it, and we don't use that information as fully and richly as we can. The more we connect, the more we validate, the more that we become a part of, is really important. And the more we do it, the richer life becomes. It will always be work. I mean, come on, this journey through this lifetime is one in which we're supposed to be learning, and it doesn't mean the lessons have to hurt bad. It doesn't mean they have to be difficult. It's how you perceive them and how you address them and how you work through them that determines what comes next. And so it's important that we understand that our intuition is really that master teacher. Our imagination is really that master teacher, giving us flashes of insight, giving us flashes of past lives, giving us all sorts of wonderful material that most of us negate. So it's really important that we sort of address those issues, that we become more and more and more, we become what we want to draw into our lives. And that's the real gist of the law of attraction. Not physically, not mentally, but spiritually. And if you spiritually become what you want to attract into your life, then all of the other parts of you kind of go along with it because you see the results. But there is an element of faith and trust and stuff like that has to be incorporated into it as well. So a key part of living the law of attraction is developing an increased awareness of the relationship with your intuition, and not pay as much attention to those people who are trying to tell you what to do. And I understand, as a reader, I'm one of those people that they come to. But the reality is, we should be helping people touch into their own higher self and their own intuition. Our society today makes us so fearful of doing things that don't seem to fit into everybody else's perception. We've been taught to listen to other people, to teachers, to parents, and follow the rules and regulations they set down for us. And okay, we grew up that way as a child, but we're adults now. And we're in control of our own life. And so long as we're in control of our own life, we can make those changes and we can make those choices. And by following your own guidance, it leads you into a life that is easier and more exciting. And our evolution becomes an adventure and not a struggle. So it's important that we understand that. I forgot to tell you all, or remind you all, I guess, of the little ninja smiley face. If you want to talk, if you want to share, please find the little ninja in the smiling faces and put it up in the chat room, and we'll open your microphone. Actually, there's so few people here today. It's sort of easier to just open them. Elmar, I'm going to open your microphone. Hi, Elmar. How are you doing today?
Hi, Barbara. I had so much trouble. I'm so frustrated. I forgot that I have a possibility to connect through Skype. I didn't. I hear you maybe 1-2 minutes. That's it so far. And now I'm on Skype.
Okay, that's fine. So how are you applying these laws? How are you changing or perceiving your life differently to be more spiritual?
Well, I believe, Barbara, that I was spiritual for a long time, but I did not see it, so I learned more. But I think I am a spiritual person, even strange sometimes, because sometimes people can't accept me like that. They, craziness.
Yeah,
they have a different approach to everything than I do. They don't even understand you when you're trying to communicate from that perception.
Well, that doesn't mean that you don't do it, though. Really,
I do it. I always do it. I think I always do it. I think I was kind of born different when I was a little baby. I was kind of on the right side. My mom always believed me, nobody else, but she believed me. I never lie. So she believed me always.
Okay, Elmar, you're coming in and out. So
see, that's horrible. Yeah, Barbara, I will be listening to you and see if I can contribute anything, because I did not even know. I really appreciate that course you're giving. I think we need that more information and just go to that corner of spirituality more.
Okay, Elmar. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I got Carrie here. Hi, Carrie. How are you doing today?
Hey.
Maybe I do. Maybe.
Oh.
Hey.
Hey.
So
I'm eating. Sorry.
So how are you applying these laws? How are you applying things like the law of attraction to your life? Not necessarily to what you say to other people, but how is it changing your life, being aware of all of this?
It's a good question. I think what I said earlier in chat, it's like if you walk your talk, it's a lot easier for people to actually believe what advice you're giving. So I'm not making this a whole religious thing, but like the Bible bashers do, they so often get thrown out of places or be told to keep quiet because they just they're sharing great stuff, but it's like, please, rather just show me you're doing it than telling me about it. And
exactly. It's not your words, because anybody can be a parrot. It's not your words at all. And it's amazing how it's easy to tell somebody something. It's easy to spout something. It's easy to memorize something and give them chapter and verse. But if you're not living it yourself, if you're not an example of it, and you know, you don't shove it down people's throats. You do it subtly and you do it quietly, and it's what defines you.
Yeah.
So it
also and also if somebody asks you for advice, like they say to me or they say to you or whatever, when is my boyfriend coming back? And you go, well, you know, it's not about the boyfriend, it's about you, you know, and even if you're not walking the talk, you know, and you've got some great advice that maybe you've heard on some other show or read in some other book, you know, I've got this from this reference or source or whatever, and you share it, and that's part of the growing part, I believe. And that's not throwing it down somebody's throat, that's not just preaching the law or whatever, you know. And you say, here we go. I'm also learning this one, but there we go. There's what you asked me for, and that's what I feel you need right now. So yeah.
And you know, I think that from what I have gathered over the last decade or so, I found that I had to really experience it first before I could share it, and really not just experience it but live it. And you know, when I talk to somebody who's lost someone and I tell them that you have to understand they're in a better place, and all they want is for you to be in a better place too. So you have to get out there. You have to not go into mourning for a great length of time. Certainly you're always going to miss them, but you need to get on with your life. And I can tell them that because that's what I did. And that's what I would do again if I had that experience. So and my feeling here, especially with the fact that most of the people here today are either readers or work with counseling other people on some level or another. It's easy to give philosophy, but that doesn't mean anything to anybody. If you're living it, if you are a living example of what you are trying to share with other people, then they pay attention. But they don't pay attention so much to your words as they pay attention to your actions. So, you know, if you are unhappy with your job, or if you're unhappy with an aspect of your job, it's not a matter, you don't bitch about it, you change it. You change your perception. You find a way of moving into loving acceptance. And you change it. You don't sit with it and complain. You change it. And I think, I feel strongly that people who are in the spiritual field have done a lot of reading, have done a lot of workshops, have you know, they've got the material down pat. But my question to most of us is, are you living it? Are you really an example of what you believe? Or are you just shoving the words out there?
Yeah, it's also like the way you make somebody feel. It's like you can talk, but and it's also the way you put it across. But it's the whole effect. Kind of like if somebody loses somebody, you know, you just don't, you know, you could go ooh and ah like everybody goes, and oh, I hope you feel better, and they're without pain. The person's going to turn around and slap you eventually because you're the 100th person that's gone, oh, I hope you're feeling better, the person's in less pain or whatever. If you actually sit there and say, well, how has this affected you, and how is your life different, and you're actually interested, you're genuinely interested in them, that's when they're going to sit up and listen to you. You know?
Well, really, they basically actually want to talk. They don't want to listen. So, you know, they have to get it out. But I find usually that if you can get people to eventually laugh, that you know you've made a point, and that they're going to take to heart some of the things that you've said. But you know, it's you know, for those of us who are in the spiritual field, for those of us who are really trying to tap into higher consciousness and get closer to that spirit we carry within us, sometimes we get so caught up in what we're doing for other people that we forget to take a look at ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's one of the hardest things that I jerk myself every now and then, and it's like, wait a minute. What is happening with my life here? And it's you know, usually a screeching halt or a 2x4 in my face. You know, it's like smack. You need to change things, and you need to. I mean, I used to do 78 fairs a year, and I realized that I wasn't having fun at them anymore. And then I got sick, and if I had said to myself, this isn't fun anymore, I don't need to do this, I can do other things instead, I'm going to stop doing the fairs, and I'm going to find something else to do with my time. If I had done that, I probably wouldn't have gotten sick. So,
I know.
So it's really we need to really, and as we get more and more and more into all of these universal rules that truly do govern our lives and our universe, you know, we have to be more in touch with that aspect of this field. Just, you know, we know there are all these universal laws. Yeah, I know that, you know, law of attraction, cause and effect, balance and harmony, all of that. But do I really apply them to my life? Do I really take them in, embrace them, and say, okay, how do you change my reality? How do I change things so that things are better, richer, more abundant? And we all want abundance, and but abundance doesn't always mean money either. So
exactly.
But I have found that the universe always takes care of us. There is always, you know, it always takes care of us. We always get what we need, not necessarily what we want, but what we need. And every time I come into a difficult time, and I look around, and it's like, am I going down for the third time, or is this only the first time, and I have 2 more times to go? It's take a look at what's going on in my life. Take a look at you know, have I withdrawn? Am I not doing as much as I once did? Am I not doing anything creative? Am I really an example of the person that I want to be, or be perceived as? It's. I think we have to take a good look in the mirror and say, all right, what is it I want people to see when they look at me and they experience my energy? Do I want them, you know, to see, you know, do I put the hooped earrings on and get the crystal ball out, or I don't have hooped earrings, but I do have a crystal ball. But it's sort of like, what do I want people to perceive me as? And basically it's kind and loving and sharing and giving, and you know, and not an easy mark, because you can go too far and you can be too trusting, and I think that then discernment comes in here. But those of us who are in the field often forget we are walking a pathway.
We are.
And you know, that's it's a human thing to forget that. But more and more and more, we try, you know, and I told everybody to leave their guardian angels and their guides and you know, all of them people at the door, and because really what you need to tap into more than that is the spirit within, and you know, the answer isn't out there, it's in here, and if you touch that consciousness that is inside of you, that is the essence of the connection to the infinite spirit, you know, all of the guides and all of the guardian angels and everything else, in my opinion, are just a way of our higher consciousness trying to get our attention.
Okay.
I don't believe, for instance, and I hope I don't insult anybody. No, I'm probably going to.
You're probably
I'm probably going to. Just count on it. I do not believe that Saint Michael personally comes and whispers in anybody's ear. I do believe that master teacher inside of us, that level of conscious inside of us, can connect us to that level of consciousness of Saint Michael.
Okay.
I mean, if you really have to have Saint Michael, but our own spirit inside of us can give us the consciousness of Saint Michael or Melchizedek or Judas or Jesus or whoever. But
whoever.
But when people say they have guides or they have direct connection to whoever, that's our higher consciousness talking to us. And because we don't trust ourselves, it masquerades as, Master Light or Master Charge or not Master Charge, that's a credit card, but Master Light or Master this or Master whatever. And it's the only way that consciousness inside of us can get our attention, by pretending to be something else that is actually less than it actually is. So it's a matter of why don't you just talk to me, and talk to yourself and say, okay, what do we think? Because, or if you want to name, which I don't think is appropriate, but if you give a name to your higher consciousness and say, okay, Fred, where are we going now? But don't make it master somebody, because that's so trite. Jeremy or Vivian or whatever you want to call your master, the master that's inside of you. But understand it's you, and understand that it's you have all of that wisdom, all of that. If you're talking about Saint Michael or Saint Peter or Saint anybody, it's a level of consciousness. Your higher consciousness easily has access to that information. It has access to your Akashic record. It has access to everything. But if you're not going to listen to yourself, and you're going to listen to somebody, someone else, and you're going to take their words and their information and their guidance more intensely, then our higher consciousness will masquerade as that. No problem. But it's sort of like, I've seen so many people that literally have a dialogue with Saint somebody or Master somebody, and they don't understand that it's them talking. It's their wisdom that's coming out of them. It's coming through them. It's coming from them. It is them.
It is them.
So that if you want to say spirit is giving me this, that's appropriate. The spirit within you is giving you that. But you don't have to make it. You don't have to make it more dramatic. You don't have to make it. You don't have to make a show of it. All you have to do is share what you're getting from yourself. We all have masters in us. Every single one of us. From the wisest, most famous person out there to the smallest child who is just learning how to talk. Master souls walking the earth plane. Now they're walking in human bodies, and human bodies are not always as cooperative as spirit is, but we have to understand that it's just you. You are a connection with creation, and when we angels, the concept of angels came from the Bible, and we could go into the fact that people who wrote the biblical stuff didn't understand how entities who were ahead of us or more technologically advanced, you had to worship them because they were ahead of us. So they created gods and they created extraterrestrials, and I do believe there are extraterrestrials, but I do believe that they are just the same part of the whole as we are. And they may know more, but that's only because they've been around maybe more lifetimes than we have, or they had a better school. I don't know, but
maybe.
But it's kind of like, I think our whole concept and our whole way of looking at life and the spirit realm is coming under a renaissance of change.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if you want to if you want to dance around a circle and do your rituals and blessings for angels and stuff, go for it. I encourage you to do that. But yeah, like you said, it's like the message is still coming through. If you want to do the angel rituals for the angels. But if you want to get the messages through, just say, this is the message. I feel it's coming from this one, or I feel from inside myself it's coming through. And that's it. Like you said, no drama. If you want to do drama, go outside and have a fair, get into your feathers and makeup and whatever, and go in tango. Go for it.
Well, yeah, and I think too that very often a spiritual journey is confused with a religious observance. And the two are not the same. I mean, you can have a religious belief system, and you can be on a spiritual journey as well. They don't conflict; they do flow together. I think that sometimes, though, religious beliefs tend to be restrictive, and spirituals tend to embrace everybody and everything. So that it's really kind of interesting to see how people feel safe with Jesus and Mary and Joseph and God, and that is a safe place. That everything is written down for you. You have it's all written down, and you have chapter and verse, and if you live accordingly, you'll be fine, and you will be, but you won't be. You won't be spiritual, but you'll be fine within this physical reality. Because on other planets, with other species, they do not have Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and God. They have other deities, quite possibly. Yeah. And when they get to a point where they are addressing themselves as a part of the infinite and a brotherhood, a cosmic brotherhood, so to speak, then we move into new realms. Then we move into new aspects of that spirit within us. And I think it's really important that we understand that connecting to that spirit is profound. And we get it through dreams, we get it through visions, we get it through daydreams, we get it through inspiration, we get it through being inspired. And it's really, really, really important to listen to ourselves. Not necessarily our egos, because our egos get us in trouble, but the higher consciousness. Oh, my ego gets me in lots of trouble all the time. I mean, when I think of my ego talking me into retail therapy at moments when there isn't the money to do it, it's like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have listened to that part of me. I should have checked it out with the other guy in there.
Yeah. Yeah, leave the credit card at home, definitely.
Yeah. Actually, that's where my master charge is. So, if Master Charge says it's okay, then it's okay. But not really, not really.
No.
But somebody asked me a long time ago what Master guided me in all of the work that I did, and I said Master Charge, and she looked at me. She said, "I don't believe I've heard of that one." And it was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me.
I haven't either, but now I have.
Yeah, well, he gets me in trouble too, so we don't go there either if we can help it. But the intuition is really important, and I think most people don't recognize that intuition is that spirit within you. Intuition is an amazing connection that we have that everybody has, that very few people actually utilize. But I'm gonna pull Deb in here.
Okay.
Since I want her too. So Deb, are you there? Let's share a little bit about your insight on intuition.
Okay. What did I say that was so good the other day? I don't remember.
I don't either.
Okay, good. Well, we're both at the same spot. Well, I think we were talking about how many times as children, the adults around us tend to reprogram it as though we have very active or wild imagination. And it tends to skew how we disassociate our intuition and actions of using it and accepting it and trusting it, and then having to go through a time of redefining it, finding out what that was really called, and learning to trust it again.
That's true. I think that quite often we get information that we don't trust because we're not sure, and when we close that part of ourselves down, then nothing comes through. Let me pull Jean in here.
So we get used to the mundane stuff, and then when we do have an experience that's there to awaken us and reconnect us, we flounder because, we were given, do I want to say disinformation? As children. And so then we have to learn for ourselves how to discern the parts of it. What's the real part of it? And then as we do, and we learn to rely on we make note of what happened, what we thought, what the outcome was, what we did, what the outcome was, then we learn our knowledge base again. I tend to liken it to, and I know this isn't a reading show, and I shouldn't go back there, but I don't know how else to explain it. We all have images or thoughts or symbols, because we talked about symbols one time, that mean something to us. And my symbol might not be identical to your symbol for something. But it's our knowledge base or symbol base, and that's what we learn to rely on. That doesn't mean we're wrong, but that's just our base that we learn to be true.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's how we learn to work with our intuition again. And I do believe that intuition is the 50-cent word for our higher knowledge coming through.
And so often we just don't trust it. I hope Jean's awake. Are you awake, Jean?
Yes.
Okay. So how do you deal with your intuition? I mean, do you trust it? Do you question it? How do you deal with your intuition?
Sometimes I can relate to it immediately and I understand what's going on and there's no doubt. And other time I'm calling up and saying, "Hey, Barb, what do you think about this?" Sometimes there's just no doubt. And others I just, I find myself guessing.
Do you find that you just sometimes say, "Oh, that was my intuition," and it was just a hunch or something? Or do you connect? Do you make that connection between the intuition and the higher consciousness?
That's a very good question. I don't know if I'm connecting the lines or not. A lot of times it's just I know.
Okay.
And if that's my intuition, then I'm connecting with my higher self. And that goes, and I do. I'll see things, and I don't know how to interpret them, so I keep my trap shut. I just, I don't want to say something that I have no knowledge of what I'm talking about.
Well, I feel that when you know something, that's you don't have to explain it, when you just know it. And
Right.
when there is doubt that quite possibly the ego is involved in part of it as well. But the more you I think sometimes you actually know and then you start questioning and then you're not sure you know. And,
yeah,
and
I
don't
believe
mean
that's right.
I don't mean you personally. I mean you as all of us, because sometimes there's an absolute here, and sometimes we just know something, we can't prove it, and sometimes the knowing is only for you unless you're doing a reading. Yeah, the knowing as far as reading and stuff like that and sharing information with other people, yeah, knowing is important. And sometimes you know something and you give it to another person, but they cannot relate to it. So you have to kind of let go and move on. It's when you're dealing with touching into somebody else's energy, that's something completely different. And I'm talking more about how do you deal with it personally within your own life, because that's the important stuff. Once you get that connection, once your feet are firmly on the ground, once you really understand that you are connected to that piece of the infinite, and that your connection gives you unlimited wisdom and knowledge and all sorts of wonderful material and energy and gifts and talents that you can utilize, then your perception of everything changes and shifts around dramatically. And everyone has those moments when they know something and they can't prove it, when they can't scientifically prove something. And those are the times that you really, really, really are connected to the divine, or whatever you want to call it, to the source of creation, to the infinite spirit, to God. And I don't like using the word God because it limits the impact of the energy that we are connected to and a part of. It's a part of being a part of creation, being a part of the Creator, and having that part within us, so that you can dial up whatever you call God or the infinite. I mean, it's right there inside of you. You can talk to it, and most of us don't. We're looking out for an outside deity as opposed to an internal deity, and that in many ways will cause turmoil in somebody's thought process because of the way they've been brought up and their religious backgrounds and stuff like that. Actually, they can now prove the existence of a spirit through weighing a body, because there is actually a weight that the spirit has. So they can prove that there is something that leaves the body at the moment of death, and it's not losing your water. It's actually a spirit moving. So there is an accepted weight to the soul or the spirit. So we know that there is something that leaves the body at the moment of death, and that's that consciousness, that level of consciousness that is the God within, or the spirit within, or the infinite within, or the Creator within, whatever you want to call it. But it's so much more powerful than people give it credit for. People talk about having a spirit, but then there are bigger spirits out there, and that's not true. We all have that big spirit inside of us. Every single one of us. There aren't bigger spirits out there. I mean, you can pretend there are, but the reality is there aren't. When all of us were created, we got the same equal spark of the infinite within us, and it is equal to the whole, totally. Infinite wisdom is held within each of us. We don't often use it well, but it's there. And, but it's having a human experience here. And just as, and this will offend people, just as Jesus had that speck of God, the Creator, within him, and he walked the earth plane as a teacher, as a rabbi, as a source of wisdom, knowledge, and love, that's exactly what we are. That's exactly what we are. And so often is quoted in the Bible that all this and more will you do, and I am a part of you and you are a part of me. I mean, it's all there. It's been talked about but never preached. So that yes, he was the Son of God. You are a daughter of God. I am a daughter of God. We are all created by, and by son and daughter, it means created by a spirit out there that burst apart, and a fragment of that spirit is in each and every one of us. And every entity, every creature that we meet has a part of that spirit in it. And every extraterrestrial that we come in contact with, when that happens, will be a part of that same infinite spirit. Same creator of everything, creator of the creation. Same guy did it all. But it wasn't a guy. And here's what's really important to everybody. We, frankly, most of us grew up with the image in our heads that God was this great big man, giant of a man with white hair and flowing robes. And that's the human perception of a creator. But if you go to, I don't know, Planet 12, where everybody is a great big blob of green goo, their concept of a creator is a great big blob of green goo. And we're all right. Because if you take away the form that we use to manifest or have form within a reality or an environment, it's different for everyone, but the spirit within is exactly the same. And when the goo dies or passes over or does what it does, that same spark of energy will look exactly like the spark of energy that will come from me and the spark of energy that will come from every single one of you. It'll all look the same. It won't be bigger or smaller. It'll all look exactly the same. And when they whacked all of the disciples and the apostles and the saints and the Pope, their little spark of energy is going to look just like yours and just like mine. And they're all interconnected. They all have total wisdom of everything. So that what's happening here is that we are giving the power out to something out there when we should be taking it in and using it ourselves to create a better environment, a better love, a better loving situation within our homes, within our jobs, whatever. It's really, really, really important that we understand that we are the creators of our own destiny here on this earth plane. And whatever it is the Spirit has to learn, the Spirit will put the roadblocks in front of us, and we'll stumble through them, around them, over them, and whatever. We'll do that, but there is perfection inside of all of us. Our personalities leave a lot to be desired, and our human forms often do not wear as well as we would like them to. But the Spirit inside is perfect and has such great wisdom to share, and it's amazing. And you know, for us to give the power outside to another deity to judge us, I don't think so. To you know, make decisions and choices for us, to damn us or to whatever, nope, doesn't happen. And I think it's a great time in life here where we can question those things, where we can, you know, ask questions and actually get some answers. I don't know what it takes to prove to everybody that they have this kind of a spirit within them, but all of us have seen magic happen. We've seen miracles happen in our lives, and we know that we're a part of them. And so it's important for us to recognize where that energy is coming from. And so, you know, I know that you work with horses, Jean, and
yes.
You have an affinity for the horses. And let me get Deb back in here too, because if Deb is still available here, both of you work with animals, and you have an ability to communicate with them. Where do you think that ability comes from?
I don't know.
I've just always had it. I'm sure Jeannie has too.
I don't know whether I do or not.
Well, for myself, I have never recalled being taught anything about horses. But when there was an emergency, my 3 sons and I could go out. It was a thunderstorm, bad hail, thunder, rainstorm, and the one horse had let all the other horses out of the stables that I lived next door to out. But I could, even in that storm, walk up to the horses and calm them enough to walk them back to the barn. But I don't recall anything about ever being taught about it.
But you just knew.
I just knew. I remember yelling to my kids, take your jackets, put them over their faces, throw your jackets over their faces so they don't see the lightning, and we walked them back to the barn.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed, I've worked with cows, I've worked with sheep. I mean, we had farms. I mean, not just where I grew up, but the family. One uncle raised sheep, one raised cows, one had pigs. And my in-laws had goats. So you just kind of learn. And I always have deer around me when I go to the woods. I can move deer if they're blocking the road.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, it's within me, I guess. I mean, I'm not trying to brag about it. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying it's just there. Just always has been.
Well, it's in everybody, but you had, you used it. You allowed it.
It was available to me. So yeah. And I because I saw it happen, and it happened continuously, even working with the dogs and stuff here. Feral cats come up to me all the time. But the thing of it is it's something I relied upon because I knew the reaction, or pretty much knew the reaction. There's other things that I don't believe I got so much because I'm not sure, but I'm learning to believe the reaction and the response.
And Jean, you work with dogs all the time, and horses.
Yes.
And
can you hear me, Barb?
You have, yeah.
Okay.
And
yes,
I've seen pictures that you've taken of horses and dogs and cats that truly show their spirits. So you have a way of reaching out and connecting with that and sharing it.
Well, I do enjoy taking pictures, that's for sure, of the animals.
Well, where do you think that ability to be really good at it comes from?
I don't know. I mean, I have a passion for the animals. I'd rather be with them than I would people, most of the time.
I think our passions come from spirit. I really do. I think this is my own phrase. It spirit turns on the right passions as though they were buttons. We just got them. We can't stop it. We just know it's there, and we don't usually try to stop it. But
well, exactly. And where do it is spirit that does that? And do you think it's the spirit sitting on a cloud someplace, or the one inside of you?
It's the one
both.
Inside of all of us.
I'm greedy. I'm going to say both. Well, no, it's the one inside of us primarily. But sure, why couldn't it be the one because a lot of us were taught, because there's, it's not always as above, so below. It's always as within, so without.
Yeah, that's true too. But you'll notice I said spirit, not angel, because it's a spirit. It comes from spirit. And spirits that are not in human form are etheric. They have no form. So yes, right. They can sit on a cloud. And when we're working with aspects of ourselves that are our passions, there's joy. It's a thrill. You don't mind doing it because it's not work, because it is such a joy. And that's where you're pouring that's where you're connecting with the spirit within, and that's where you're increasing the flow of energy that is flowing around and within you, because there is that aspect of working with spirit, being one with spirit, and that's when magic happens. And I think it's so important to understand that magic happens all around us all the time, and we just aren't recognizing it. We are basically kind of just sitting back and saying, oh, that's a coincidence, or that's, you know, another aspect of, you know, it's just an accident that happens. But there are no accidents and there are no coincidences. And if you let spirit manifest, it brings out of you such amazing talents and abilities that it's unbelievable. But it's sort of trusting and having faith that they're there. And so often we don't trust and we don't have the faith. And so a lot of talents and skills and gifts go unutilized because we don't believe that they're there.
Well, isn't that kind of like just being like a child, for instance? My mother could not, she would not even fathom the thought that I could learn how to draw. My uncle, who was a very good artist, says anybody can learn how to draw if they sit and practice. Yes, there's pointers. It's the same thing as everybody can play piano. Some play chopsticks like all the kids did, you know, or, you know, you sit down and you get taught and you practice until you can play Chopin. It's there if you work at it. And it's like all those other talents. Some people can sew. Some people can knit. Some people can paint. I mean, there's so many things, but some it comes easier to, and other things they have to practice at it. But if you're not told often that you can't do it, you will do it, you know, over a course of time in practice.
Well, absolutely, and you know, we've all seen, and you know, what I find is amazing. We've seen so often animals that have been disabled or have lost a foot or have been paralyzed or whatever, and nobody told them that they couldn't learn to walk again or they couldn't learn to walk without one of their legs or whatever. And so long as they were treated with love and compassion and helped to learn, they are able to function and they are able to be, you know, as happy as any other dog or horse or whatever. And it's the same with human beings. If you don't tell somebody they can't do something, if you tell them that of course they can, but they're going to have to work at it, and they're willing to do the work, they choose to do the work, then they can achieve anything. Now, you know, none of us are going to be Miss Teenage America, but there are aspects of our lives where there are skills and talents that we haven't yet learned. And if we put our minds to it, we can learn them. But it's a matter of committing ourselves to the work and wanting to learn. And so often people don't learn because they don't want to learn.
Or they're afraid to learn.
Or they're afraid to learn, yes. I just have an advertisement coming through the computer. I don't know why suddenly the ads are coming through like they are, but they certainly are.
You might have to update your ad blocker.
Yeah, or break the TV, one or the other.
Okay.
Not highly evolved.
Now I'm sorry. I was just reading what Marguerite said, and she, you know, it says we can be held back from fear, or we can learn from fear. I think fear is a control, and it depends how it's used.
Oh, yeah.
And fear, there is also a part of fear that gets a bad rap because there's a certain element of fear that is built into the human body and the mind and the perceptions to save them, you know, to save the person from extreme dangers that they have not learned to perceive as a danger yet.
Okay.
I mean that's been proven, but the other part of it is fear in a mass, you know, way is how big religions controlled whole populations. Be it before when when Christianity was coming in, or they were trying to drive paganism out. There was a lot of times Christians and paganism, there was over 600 years, I believe, that's documented, that they got along, they coexisted perfectly happy and wonderful. Then all of a sudden, a regime come along and said, nope, it's going to be against the law to be a pagan. You have to be, say, Roman Catholic. And that's the way it's going to be. And then, they would drive the fear into, well, you can't be whatever because they're going to kill you. And then if that regime goes out of favor and a different one comes in and, then they change whatever. And those are just examples. There's many others, and it depends the region and the time and everything else. But the control is there. There was an article that was today on Facebook. I think I sent it to you. In Waking Times. I'm going to put the link in, and only because it delineates different ways how fear is used for control, be it an individual person or whole societies. And that's not to beat anybody over the head. It's just a real quick comparison.
Oh yeah, and the thing too with fear, I mean, frankly, the fear of death would make me change my religion in a heartbeat.
But not everybody was taught to fear death until, and actually, I can't find the article now, but I read, and I know I even read it for a college class. Fear in the United, and I'm going to put it in the United States because I know that's where the article was located at. They learned that if they taught fear of death, and that's when morticians came into the whole thing with the funeral parlor and do it out of the house, and then it was like late 1800s, early 1900s, basically Victorian era, when they could learn that they could control people's behavior with the fear and make money off of it. So,
no, it's very true.
It's exploited. Fear can be exploited too, and then change it to. I mean, my grandmother, I always relate to her, but she taught me so much. She was born in the late 1800s, and death wasn't feared. That was graduation. That was a rejoicing time. Yes, you acknowledged that you would miss the person and everything, but you were happy for them because they beat all the chores and the tribulations of this world and went on to the better. And it was believed, you're gonna connect up later. It was not that. It was not taught to fear it. And isn't it? I can't remember. Is it the Koreans or the Chinese? One of them that they mourn at weddings and or in births they celebrate, or is it the other way around?
No, it's the Chinese.
Death is exactly a huge celebration.
They wear black at birth and white at death.
Okay, that way. All right, is one of them. I forgot. It's in there somewhere.
You're absolutely true. I mean, fear is manipulative and controlling, and if you let it get the best of you, then you lose control of your own destiny and reality. And it's sort of like someplace I read that if you don't take control, then someone will take it for you, and you will lose control of your life and your destiny, your pathway. And it's really important that there are things that fear is good in that if you fear fire, you won't get burned, but you can take it too far, and if you too much, then you won't be warm and you could freeze to death. So it's got a double-edged sword here, but there are healthy fears and there are unhealthy fears.
But isn't that where balance comes back into play, to learn a balance of it?
Absolutely. So that it's part of. And what was that phrase we were talking about earlier? Fear is false ego appearing real. And you had another interpretation for it.
False evidence appearing real. It didn't have anything with ego. It was false evidence appearing real.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, to make you fearful of something is to take away the wisdom connected to it. If somebody tells you the fire will burn you and it will harm you, and you understand that and you give it respect, then that's one thing. But if you do this, your soul will never, go to heaven. That's a whole nother ball of wax, because it's damning you to hell because, and for whatever the reason, they put the fear of God into you, and so that you don't do other things that might be beneficial to you because you're afraid of what they're saying is going to happen to you. So, fear. I mean, you can have fear of success, because that your life is going to change, and so in order to prevent the change, which you don't know what direction it's going to go, you will intentionally not be successful just to make sure you don't have to deal with the changes that might come with success.
That's why a lot of people are caught self-sabotaging. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Because they're already they may not like what they know, but they're comfortable in it because they know how to handle that part of it. And they're fearful of learning to handle the change and what comes with it, even if they are convinced in their mind it's a good change.
Well, also remember that these are people that are so caught up in their physical reality, they don't have an understanding of the truth that is within them and the power that is within them. They are so caught up in the physicality that the spiritual is totally non-existent within their life. And once they have an understanding of the spiritual and the balance and the universal laws and how they can take control of their lives, they have a whole other perspective as to how success can be applied and how they can address the issues. The philosophy behind the spiritual pathway is that you do have control and you do have a way of harmonizing with those energies that are out there and increasing the abundance in your life. But fear is so limiting. Fear is so controlling. Fear, for the most part, makes you creep back into your intellectual self and slam the door on the spiritual self. Because faith is something that you can't put a finger on, and you can't highlight, and you can't touch, smell, taste, feel, or hear. But somebody telling you that you're wrong and you're going to be punished is something that you do understand. So you let the intellect take over at that particular point in time. But once you open to the spiritual aspects that are out there, once you flow in rhythm with them, in time with them, it's just amazing how life does change. And there is no fear because there's an understanding of how life is meant to be something that is enjoyed, and it is something that is meant to be celebrated, and it's something that's meant to be a rich experience. And quite often we don't look at it that way. We look at it as though life is a struggle and then we die. And that's just not the way it totally is.
Well, look at how many cultures, or do I want to say religious sects, teach that the more you struggle, the purer you are. It's the, better you are when you come out of it. And I don't think that's true. I think that's more hurdles that people have put in front of you to make, that it doesn't mean that you're any purer.
So life doesn't have to be a struggle. Life doesn't have to be hard. But you have to understand that first of all you are in control, and second of all that there is the element here of flowing and going with the flow with the universal energies that have always governed the universe and the cosmos as a whole. And that's another reason why we're going to go into all of them, because we all have to pay attention to, am I walking this? I may be talking it, but am I walking it? and am I addressing my challenges appropriately so that I am an example of how to appropriately do this? And but isn't that a man rule, not a spirit rule? No, it's a spirit rule. Okay, so
no, I was going through what Marguerite says. The more, it's that whole thing. The more sacrifices you have, the better person you are, the purer you're going to become, and all those different things. But aren't those hurdles and sacrifices man-made rules, not a spirit rule?
Well, no, the hurdles actually are what the spirit asked for in order to experience this physical reality. So you got to understand, the spirit's down here to evolve and grow, and it does it through how it overcomes issues that come into its radar, and it's how do you deal with those things. We ask for the hurdles. We ask to be given situations that will help us develop certain aspects and areas, spiritually speaking. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's a physical thing, but it is a spiritual thing. And sometimes those qualities, next time I want to come down here and improve that I can be exceedingly wealthy and still spiritual. I'm figuring I can talk the other side into letting me come down here and prove just how spiritual I can be, even with a ton of money.
And here I was just waiting for you to live forever so I could come back as one of your cats.
Well, I neutered them, so watch out,
Yeah.
But no, it's sort of like, this is what we've asked for. We've asked for these challenges, and how we address them, how we perceive them, is part of our growth and part of our learning and part of our pathway. And it's spiritual. I every now and then challenge my checkbook, but it has to be something that I've asked for because I do it so often, and it's a matter of, I'm going to learn to do this better, and it's not that it's a physical thing or a mathematical thing. It's how am I living my life so that I get the same richness, the same joy, the same bliss, and I don't scare myself with bills that I don't have the money to pay. I mean, it is a spiritual thing. It's have I chosen to be cautious to a certain degree, or am I just throwing caution to the wind and saying what the hell, after I die I don't have to pay the bill anyhow, but I'm not going to die anytime soon, so you have a problem there. So all of the struggles are things that we've asked for, and how intense they are depends upon our perception of them. Yes, not having the money to cover the bills, it's not a joke. We don't laugh about it, but we do look at the different options we have and say, how can I solve this? How can I make this better? And ask and you shall receive is that's very true. We asked for situations to challenge us, and we got them. And you can ask for money, and unless you're willing to work for it, chances are you're not going to get it. But you can ask for ways in which to solve the problems that you've gotten yourself into. And I think the worst issues that I get into over time have been where I wasn't paying attention, and I got carried away with myself on an intellectual level and didn't listen to the spiritual information that was being poured at me. And so, when I decided to pay attention again to what the spirit within was talking to me about, I got back on track, and it wasn't hard. Well, it was at first, but it's not a hard thing to do. But you need to pay attention to the spiritual laws that are out there and how we address them within our reality, and they're absolute laws. They either determine how exciting and wonderful and happy our life is going to be, or how miserable and difficult it's going to be. And we make that determination by the choices that we make. And so it's a matter of listening to what's going on inside, and so often we don't listen. The connection is there. And you know, people talk about a spiritual pathway, but my fear is that they are only talking it and they're not walking it. And that's why we do classes. That's like why we do circles like this, to sort of remind people that we first of all have control, and then have to be responsible for our decisions and our choices. And that's heavy duty, because the responsibility is not only in this life, but you know, in the afterlife, where we have to experience, you know, the results of some of our actions. I don't believe there's judgment, but I do believe we are exposed to those things that we caused, and we have to feel what kind of things that we have inflicted on other people, and that is not a pleasant experience sometimes. I am sure that you know, I know I'm not perfect, and I know that there have been times that I have misjudged words that I've said or things that I've done, and hopefully that with greater clarity of vision in this part of my life, I can maybe balance it out and make up for it, so that, you know,